Welcome to the Black Gems Dive In podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into conversations about inclusive cultures and everything DEI. Your co-hosts are Akua and Kendra, and we're thrilled to be your hosts as we explore the crucial topics shaping our workplaces and communities today. In each episode, we'll unpack insights, share stories, and engage with experts to foster a deeper understanding of how we can create more inclusive environments where everyone feels valued and empowered.
Hey, Kua.
Hey, Kendra.
We're here for another episode of Black Gems Dive In.
You know, we back.
Yes.
We back.
Yeah. So how was your weekend?
It was good. Yeah. I mean, I saw you this entire weekend.
I know.
But
for the people, let's recap the weekend because it was a lot that happened.
Yeah, it was. It was like an active weekend, but you know, it's the end of summer, unfortunately. I don't know. I mean, I love fall too, but it's the end of summer.
I know. End of your birthday month.
End of the birthday month.
I know. Celebrations.
But yeah, you know, getting into fall season. But you know how Buffalo is. Like, it activates when it's hot outside, it's warm. Yep. People want to be outside and enjoy the weather while we still got it, y'all.
Exactly.
But yeah, so this weekend, I'm trying to, like, go through all the days. So Friday, we went to the Buffalo cookout.
Yep.
And what happened there?
We had fun. We had fun. We had the cookout. We always say we were the aunties and uncles at the cookout.
Right.
But it was great food. It was just great to be around community, be around just people after a long week, and just have fun. And Jamil DJ'd, so that was fun. Jamil always does a great job whenever you see him behind the ones and twos. So we had a great time just dancing and laughing, and so shout out to Lindsay Taylor for putting that together and his team as well for the entire weekend.
Right. Because then after that late night,
we woke up. So Saturday, actually, that morning, I went out to Cradle Beach, which is a camp for kids about 45 minutes outside of Buffalo. And I did a presentation about empowerment outside of the court for the kids under my business Out of Bounds. So that went really well. And just really happy to see the book that I co-authored in the hands of children. Like, it's just really excited to see and asking them, you know, questions about their life, and they're asking me questions and just engaging conversations and interactive activities.
Right.
So that was fun in the morning.
And I mean, let's recap that, right? Because you had put the book out, you co-authored the book. We had your launch last.
Yes.
When was that?
Earlier this year,
Earlier
March.
this year.
Yep.
Okay, so in March, and then you spoke about wanting to start to make this a curriculum, talk to kids, and so you've had multiple engagements so far. I have,
and I've been testing out this curriculum, small bits and pieces of it, which will be coming out soon. But I've had my book in the hands of Colgate University women's basketball team, so I had speaking engagement there. PAL, Police Athletic League with Nakia. So thank you, Nakia, for having me with those kids. And then Breaking Barriers through Say Yes as well this past weekend.
Yeah, so let's go. I mean, first of all, let's go. Congratulations on all the motion and movement you got going on that side. Because, you know, you're doing it, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're doing it.
Thank you.
So while you were doing that, I was at Pilates.
Yep.
But then, which, you know, I got to shout out Chantel Douglas, too, because she is creating... I know we've talked about this in the past, but she's creating this just a space and atmosphere for Black women and women of color to participate in Pilates. And she's making it more affordable, more accessible, and just doing really cool things with it. So I know she's going to be doing a, for fall, I think it's like Prosecco and Pilates events, because she was doing Pilates under the sun, but now that it's getting a little, you know, cooler, she'll be transitioning into that. So, you know, we did that. And then we did a golf tournament, right?
So back to Buffalo's golf tournament. And it was just really great to just be out. I have not golfed in weeks, so I didn't do great, but it was just fun just to be out.
Get back out.
Yes, with Jess Turner and her son from New Era, so head of DEI New Era. And that was really great. Yeah. And y'all, we ended up winning Best Dressed Pair, along with Jess and her son as well, for the mother-son duo. But the back of our shirt said "Where Diversity Drives," which is the tagline for Gems on the Green,
y'all.
So that was good.
Yeah, and so, you know, we had fun there. I think, and so I had paused some of my golf lessons, but I've been trying to make it a point to at least golf once a week, because you're right. Like, if you don't if you don't do it, like if you don't use it, you lose it type of thing when it comes to golf. But it comes back. You just, you know, got to get back out there. Yeah. So we need to look at another tea time, ma'am. We do. For this week. Brandy, you too. You need to come out with us.
We're looking at Brandy behind the scenes right now.
Shout out to Brandy.
Yes.
And then Sunday. So Sunday, I'm trying to think what happened Sunday. Okay, so tabled at Funk Fest.
Yes.
Am I going to tell the people that? I guess. I'm looking for a house, y'all. So me and Kendra came with me, and we started looking for homes.
I feel like I was on House Hunters. Like,
it was
house
interesting.
number one.
It was interesting.
It was.
It's a process. I'm just trying to see what's going to happen with that, and we'll see. I'll leave that there. And
I have the less pressure because I could just go as the friend.
Right.
So, but
it was helpful to have you because we were looking at stuff like, like the basement, I could hardly stand up straight. It was for
some of these houses are not made for tall people.
Dag. We need some more height and some, so we'll see what happens.
And Kua don't like bugs. So
no.
The guy was like, "Oh, you can crawl into this crawl space," and Kua was like, "Who crawling in there?
Crawling in a crawl space?" This is what I was asking because it was like a little window in the basement that he's like, "Oh, I wouldn't mind getting in there," and I'm like, "Well, what would you need to get in there for to begin with?" Anyways, that's how the house search is going so far, but I'm sure there'll be more info to share on that side for sure.
Yeah, and then we went two separate sides of the city, kind of in a way. So you want to talk about Funk Fest?
Yeah. So one of the projects that Clementine Go Group, my company, is with the Buffalo Sewer Authority, and so we are doing community engagement to let them know about some sewer improvements that are happening near Kenesha's university. And so we tabled at that event, and so we were there for a few hours tabling and just getting information out to the community. But then after we tabled and put the stuff away, me and Mark, we actually came back with our chairs, sat down, and enjoyed Funk Fest, right?
Yes.
So this is the 20th anniversary for Funk Fest, so they've been doing it consecutively for 20 years. I didn't realize the history behind it, though. So you always hear about Funk Fest and how it's a great event. It's at MLK Park. But it was after Rick James died, and Rick James is a Buffalo native. And it was a few of his friends and family that came together and put on this event. And so it started in front of somebody's house, I think. Then it got larger to a block party. They had to shut the street down. And then they had to rent out the park because so many people, wanted to come out. And so for 20 years, they've been doing this event. They had some really dope pictures of him with people we know in the community in Buffalo. And his family was also represented there as well. I think it was his brother who was on stage and just talked about...
Is he the artist? Is his brother a local artist?
I'm not sure.
Because I think he has a brother. Don't quote me, but I think he has a brother who's a local artist whose displays have been in the Birchfield Penny recently.
Cool. Okay. Okay. So they had family there. They also honored Adri V with the Joyce Nixon Award. Who Joyce Nixon was a community advocate and performer, and she passed away last year. So her husband was there and gave out some shirts to the crowd. But then they also honored Adri V with the first Joyce Nixon Award. Awesome. So that was dope too. But when I tell y'all, you talk about we were the aunties and uncles. On Friday, we was with the aunties, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, everybody out there. And it was just a great time. Like, people had their chairs out. They had their coolers out. And me and my friend Mark, we were just like, this is our scene now to a certain extent because it's fun, right? Like, you could lay back, listen to some really good music. People were dancing, having a good time. And, you just see Black excellence out in the park. And so it was a good time. Good time.
Good.
And what did you do, man?
And I went on the other side at the Central Terminal in the east side and went to the Buffalo Art and Music Festival, which was really great to see just some local artists. It was great to see that it was a family-friendly event. So you had your family-friendly tent with the AKG was there. With their all the things that they do with the truck, and it was just really great to just see great food, great musicians, community, all those different things come together. And I believe this is the 8th year that they've done it. So each and every year it gets bigger. There's more events tagged onto it as well. So it was a full weekend.
Man, we was out late. We were out late, and then just rolled right into the week. But it was a great weekend. I think a great end of summer.
It was. It was. Don't say that in the summer.
I know. It is.
It's 85 degrees today. I'm gonna keep that in mind.
Right. So let's dive right on in.
Yes.
We got a lot to cover today.
We do.
Really great conversations I think we're gonna have. But first and foremost, we got to hit the diversity dispatch.
Yes.
And y'all know diversity dispatch is when we cover all the things that are kind of happening in the DEI realm as it relates to this work and what's happening, what's going on. And unfortunately, we have a couple of cases of DEI being rolled back again. And the first one is Jack Daniels the Jack Daniels brand, right? And so this is coming out of the spirits business. And it says that Jack Daniels owner Brown-Forman scraps DEI policies. And so there was a leaked email suggested that Brown-Forman has abandoned its corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. The screenshots of an email on X shared by right-wing commentator Robby Starbuck show Brown-Forman wrote to employees on the 21st of August, informing them that the company was going to stop linking executive compensation to progress on DEI. Brown-Forman launched its diversity and inclusion strategy in 2019. However, the DEI page on the Brown-Forman website no longer exists. Spirits Business contacted them for a statement, but the company also said it would end its participation in the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index survey. And we know that this survey is where a lot of organizations were trying to meet the needs based on the qualifications and criteria to be an inclusive organization.
Yeah, specifically LGBTQ.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So in the email, it says that we also believe that to better reach consumers from Louisville to London, from Sao Paulo to Sydney, and everywhere in between, we must include different perspectives and experiences in our decisions and ways of working. For these reasons and more, we launched our diversity and inclusion strategy in 2019. Since then, the world has evolved, our business has changed, and the legal and external landscape has shifted dramatically, particularly within the United States. With these new dynamics at play, we must adjust our work to ensure it continues to drive business results while appropriately recognizing the current environment in which we find ourselves. So what does that sound like to you?
Everything that's going on already. I mean, each of these companies are rolling back these policies, and I find it very interesting that in here they're saying how, we have to continue to drive business results. Well, that's exactly what DEI is supposed to do.
Right.
Right. So again, it's not really understanding what DEI is. It's seen as everything we've been saying for weeks is seen as a threat.
Right.
This is why so many organizations, such as even SHRM, took out the equity piece. Again, it's just like a record that keeps playing over and over again.
And so it goes on to say that on Thursday, August 22nd, Eric Blom, the Human Rights Campaign Foundation's Vice President of Programs and Corporate Advocacy, issued a statement saying that Robby Starbuck is so radical, the Tennessee Republican Party kicked him off the ballot. Companies should not be cowering to a random guy with zero business experience who is a political bully and an election denier. These short-sighted decisions have also have long-term consequences, hastily abandoning efforts that ensure fair, safe, and inclusive work environments for LGBTQ plus people on manufactured outrage from MAGA bullies is bad business and leaves their employees and millions of LGBTQ plus allies, customers behind. And it says, with nearly 30% of Gen Z identifying as LGBTQ plus and the community wielding the U.S. $1.4 trillion in spending power, retreating from these principles undermines both consumer trust and employee success. And so I just kind of want to highlight this Robby Starbuck person, because he's also the one who raised a high profile on the efforts of Harley Davidson, the motorcycle company, and their DEI efforts. He went on Glenn Beck's podcast. I forgot the name of the podcast, and basically was saying, hey, we are coming for these large organizations because we don't believe in DEI and we want to roll it back, and we're going to highlight them to their consumers, and they are using it as some type of anti-woke campaign. And so you have this one person who is banding together with others who are right-wing, because Glenn Beck is also, in alignment with that, and saying, get rid of it. And these companies are saying, okay, we don't want the smoke. And getting rid of it.
Exactly. And it goes on to say that, so Brown-Forman's email also stated in the beginning of January that ensuring executive incentives and employee goals are not tied to business performance and removing our quantitative workforce and supplier diversity ambitions. Brown-Forman also said it will review training programs for consistency with the evolved strategy. And I would just be interested to see what their executive team looks like. That's the other thing too. But the email continued on to say, more important, however, is what will not change. We will continue to foster an inclusive work environment where everyone is welcome, respected, and able to bring their best self to work. How is that going to be measured?
Well, he said they're going to continue to offer employee resource groups to all employees as a place for professional development. education, mentorship, and networking, and we will continue to reinforce our shared responsibility to building a global Brown-Forman team that reflects the many customers and geographies we serve. We know it will not be easy to navigate the road ahead, but please know our deep belief in and respect for each of you remains constant. And so I don't know how that respect and admiration remains constant when you're saying, you know what, this right-wing group is coming at us. They're going to make this a large ordeal. And so instead of putting 10 toes down and saying, you know what, this is what we believe in, this is a core value of our organization, they're going to run away from, you know, having this as a core value now.
Yep, exactly. And again, we keep talking about metrics, and I'm sorry, y'all, this is live, and I just saw one of my friends who I haven't seen in years. So, hey, y'all. But yeah, it's about removing, you know, they talk about removing some of these quantitative metrics. And again, we know metrics drives results. And so now you're taking that away, and it's alarming. Yeah. It's alarming, right? So we keep saying we're reversing back to 2019 and before, but even before that, like they're just pulling back the onion, you know. And
I think, you know, the challenge that I have with this too is it's one person with a microphone who, I don't know how many shows he's going on. You know, I know the Glenn Beck story, you saw it all in the news, and then they started to show the reaction. So on Twitter, like Harley Davidson, for instance, you got all these people, oh my gosh, really? I'm not even proud of my Harley anymore because they represent this, and they went to the LGBTQ pride parade, and, you know, so we're just not going to support anymore. I want to sell my bike. And you see all this rhetoric, but I don't know, you know, looking at demographics and who buys and, you know, who's your customer, they're making decisions based on the potential threat of losing business. And so instead of standing 10 toes down, it's like, you know what, we don't want the smoke, so we're just going to back up. Yeah, we still believe in all this. We're not going to measure it. It won't matter anymore. Right. But we still are going to be inclusive and have, you know, these principles within our organization. So I don't know. I think we need to think about the other side of that and the counter effect of, okay, if you decide to roll these back, then, you know, maybe there needs to be a counter effect of that and making noise around that too.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. Because a lot of this, they talk about and highlight the legal implications, right? And how things are changing. And we know that affirmative action was just one of those things that it started with affirmative action
at education level.
And at the education level, and all these things that's trickling out of it. Right. So from reverse discrimination, all these things we're seeing at the Supreme Court level. And so, you know, people legally are saying we don't want to be tied to this, but we're still going to invest in this. And it's like you can't be on both sides.
Speaking out of both sides of the mouth.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So more to come, more to see.
I think we'll start to see how things play out post-election. You know? I think that's in January of next year, we'll start to see how things play out. And again, you know, it takes about 2 years to kind of see how these kind of play out as well. So it doesn't obviously start January 1st, but we'll see whether they continue to roll these things out or kind of backtrack. And
I'm wondering what that might look like from an election standpoint. You know, we know that the former president, Donald Trump, rolled back DEI initiatives at the federal level. And that was something that really excited his base, right? And so I remember having conversations on the podcast about that. And so even in Project 2025, there's a whole notion around DEI programs at the federal level and eliminating that. And so I think we could expect that that would be the case if, you know, Donald Trump wins again. On the reverse side of that, with Vice President Kamala Harris, you know, I think that there's a lot of conversations around what that could look like, you know, with her tutelage. So we're going to see. We're going to see.
I mean, we always say Project 2025 is just like, that's the playbook.
Yeah, exactly.
That is the playbook.
Exactly.
So we could say it's one guy going on to these shows and saying all these different things, but he has the playbook literally right in front of him.
Right. That's true.
So
very true.
All right, y'all. So we'll see. We'll continue to follow these stories. So that was our diversity dispatch.
Right.
And now we have our hot topic.
Yes.
And there is an article that says white collar work is just meetings now. The meeting industrial complex has grown to the point that communications has eclipsed creativity as a central skill of modern work. And this is by Derek Thompson from The Atlantic. It says the paradox of a modern white-collar worker is that she is simultaneously more and less alone than her analog in a previous generation. On a given weekday, the share of the labor force working from home is roughly 4 times higher than it was before the pandemic, At no other point in modern history have so many workers spent so much time in a room by themselves during the weekday. But how much of that time is truly alone in the absence of other people's faces and voices? By some measures, our colleagues are with us more than ever, whether or not we like it that way. The share of the typical white-collar workday spent in meetings has steadily increased in the past few decades, and it continues to grow by the year.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to pause right there because I'm laughing while I'm reading this because Cool always says to me, "You always in a meeting." And I'm like, yeah, that's just like, that's life. And but how much work am I actually getting done?
And I think that's exactly what this article is questioning, is like how much work can be done if more than half of the time of your workday is spent in meetings.
Right.
When do you actually do the work? Exactly.
I mean, in this article, we're not going to read the entire article, but it talks about how we end up working after work.
Right.
In order to get the job done. But here's some statistics for you. In 2016, a small group of work researchers calculated that time spent in meetings has increased by 50% since the 1990s. Collaboration is taking over the workplace, they wrote in the article in Harvard Business Review. Buried under an avalanche of requests for input or advice, some workers were spent so much time in meetings taking calls and combing through their inbox that their most quote-unquote critical work often had to wait until they were home. Wall-to-wall meetings from 9 to 5 were pushing any creativity or individual work to some period after dinner.
After dinner.
Yeah.
After dinner. So that means we in meetings, y'all, during the day so much that we can't get the work done. So you literally are talking about the work and what you got to do. But it's not until you get home where you're like, all right, now I have no distractions. Let me get to work, which when you think about it from a work-life balance standpoint, sounds insane.
It does.
Right? And this is what they're calling the white-collar, worker now. So you're just in meetings all day.
You're just in meetings,
Meeting after meeting.
Well, they talk about, too, right, in this article, they talk about how workplace culture is now focused on being more inclusive, which is ironic because we just talked about the Jack Daniels story and how other organizations are kind of taking that focus off. But businesses are focused on being more inclusive, on letting more people's voices be heard in decision making. So inclusion can be a virtue, but it can also be a cost, as they continue to say. And so a business culture that allows more people to quote unquote say their piece is automatically one that requires people to spend more time listening to other people talk.
Right.
And how many times have we been in a meeting where we're like, this could have been an email?
Could have been an email, could have been, and I think that's the other thing that the article talked about is that in previous times, and this is probably, pre-pandemic that they're talking about, there'd be we used to call them casual collisions. So you're going to the water fountain, right? The water fountain, the water cooler. You know what I'm talking about. Or you're going to go to the bathroom. You see somebody in the bathroom. You're having a conversation. And those used to be more prominent and prevalent. But now it's just like, no, we have to have these formal meetings where, to your point, be more inclusive. But it's also taking time away from you being able to sit at your desk, be unbothered, and get some work done.
And get work done, another thing it says, too, is last year, a study from Microsoft found that the typical worker using a software spent 57% of their time communicating. That is in meetings, email, and chat versus 43% of their time actually creating documents, spreadsheets, presentations, and the like. So today, knowledge work is, quantitatively speaking, less than creating new things than it is about talking about those things.
Yeah. So Spataro, he's someone who I think comes from the Microsoft space as well, but it said that also in recent cultural changes, it might be driving the surge in meeting times. And so in the last few years, the business world has focused more on inclusion and letting people's voices be heard in decision making, but it also can be a cost. And so it says a business culture is that it allows more people to say their piece, but that also requires people to spend more time listening to other people talk, like you said. I think the biggest thing is this coordination tax that they talk about as well. So you're coordinating all these meetings, you're putting, so much effort into putting the meeting materials together, making sure you have these agendas and going through it, but you still are just talking more than you actually getting work done, y'all.
Yes.
So what are we going to do?
This article makes me tired thinking about it. Because you ever wake up and you look at your calendar like, oh, it's so many meetings. How am I actually going to get the work done?
Yeah.
Right. And we talk about this even in the world of consulting. There's so many meetings. But the prep work that leads to the meetings, you almost have to block off a day before just to prep for that meeting.
That's also why you charge for that prep time, yo.
Yes.
You have to.
You have to charge for the prep time. That's another thing. Yep.
One more thing that I want to highlight is that it found, this is Gloria Mark of UC Irvine, has found that workers require an average of 25 minutes to return to their original task after an interruption, like a meeting. And so by this measure, a 30-minute meeting is, for the typical worker, best thought as a 1-hour detour. So you need 25 minutes just to recoup and probably, you know, think about what you just talked about at the meeting. And so that even takes more time. So, and then don't let it be a meeting after the meeting.
Meeting after the meeting. Then that's your day right there.
That's your whole day.
The other thing is, Spataro said that he is optimistic that AI tools will eliminate unnecessary meetings and allow people to focus on their work, or even better, slash hours of meetings that they can be instead to devote to leisure. So he's not sure, but they are building more communication tools to kind of help with this for the future workplace.
So consider these things before y'all just schedule a meeting for no reason.
Yes.
Could it be an email? Could it be a, you know, I don't know, you think about like the messenger on there, like just ask a quick question instead of it being a whole
and
meeting.
Evaluate what true inclusivity looks like in your workplace. It doesn't always have to be just meetings, right? It can be creating inclusivity workplace outside of just a meeting. Everyone doesn't have to bring literally everything to the table. So what does that look like when it comes to decision making?
Maybe going to lunch.
Yeah, something.
Maybe a coffee.
Yeah.
You know, but that does require you to be back in the office. And I know that a lot of people have feelings about that. They want there to be more flexibility, but unfortunately that does also cost more time at home, you know, so making dinner and sending emails at the same time.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting? I think it was France and somewhere else where, was it Australia? Where it's now illegal to work after 5 p.m.?
What?
Like, it's not work, but have someone email you, like maybe a supervisor or something like that. We'll have to look into that a little bit more, but...
You may not have a co-host. I'm going to be moving.
I'm crying. They can't hit you up after 5 p.m. So I don't know. Maybe we need to, you know, Europeans always are more progressive with their policies.
Very.
So we always
Europeans than California.
Yeah. Well, anyways, we will see what happens on that side.
Yeah. So that was our hot topic.
Yeah. So we're gonna go into our deep dive, right? And so this is our next segment where we take a deep dive into a specific topic. Today, we're going to be talking about, and this is actually coming out of work that happened at Harvard. And so it's a paper that was written, and it says the intersectional peer effects at work, the effect of white coworkers on Black women's careers. And it says the abstract talks about this paper investigates how having more white coworkers influences the subsequent retention and promotion of Black women. So the study included 9,037 new hires at a professional services firm. They first documented the large racial turnover and promotion gaps even after controlling for observable characteristics. So even after observing that, Black employees are 32% more likely to turn over within 2 years, and 26% less likely to be promoted on time than their white counterparts. The largest turnover gap is between Black and white women at 8.9 percentage points, which was 51% in this article and study. They also argued that initial assignment to project teams is conditionally random, so placed on these tests that they did, the placebo test and qualitative evidence. So under the assumption of this assignment, they show that at least one standard deviation, which is 20.8% points, increase in the share of white coworkers is associated with an increase in turnover at 11.5% decrease in promotion for Black women. So as you go, and there's a lot of information in this article, but as you read it, it basically is saying with there being more, you know, homogeneity in these organizations of white people, Black people suffer, and it's specifically Black women more than anybody else is suffering.
And it goes on to say that Black women are the only race gender group whose turnover and promotion is negatively impacted by coworkers. So they explore the potential casual pathways through which these peer effects may emerge. So Black women who were initially assigned to wider teams are subsequently more likely to be labeled as low performers and report fewer billable hours, both of which are predictors of high turnover and lower promotion for all employees. And they said their findings contribute to the literature of peer effects, intersectionality, and the practice of managing race and gender equality in organizations. So, so like Kua said, this article says a lot. But one thing that I think about too, as these organizations again are continuing to peel away their DEI policies and initiatives, the people who are going to be harmed the most, it seems like, are Black women.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And we've experienced it. I mean, as Black women early on in our career, and even prior to you even being a consultant full time, and even me early on in my career, I've experienced it where it's like, where do I belong? Yeah. You know, and I can't see myself either in this department or organization for longer than a year.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, the article talks about the retention falls off at around 2 years, right? So around that mark, people, you got a good feel, because think about it, you go into an organization, it takes you at least 6 months to really get a sense of your job and the culture of an organization and what's happening. And then you're working within this, you know, next 18 months to really figure out, like, you know, do I see myself growing and staying here, or do I need to leave? And that's one of the things that we talk about all the time as DEI practitioners, is that you can do all the recruitment you want of bringing Black women, people of color, you know, others with different diversity characteristics to the table and to a job. But if you don't create that environment where they feel like they can succeed, and I mean, look at the study is telling you that with more white people in the workplace, we're leaving because we don't have those folks who are, you know, calling for us to have promotions or get, you know, advantages in the workplace. And so, you're wasting your efforts to try to diversify your workplace if you don't have some type of program or some type of thought process around how you're building an inclusive culture. Right. You know? And
some people may say, well, why does it matter? Right. True. Some people are like, why does it matter? Why do we care? You know, but it's, as we keep talking about before, it's linked to profitability, right? They keep talking about less billable hours and things like that, but it really is truly linked to profitability. There's plenty of studies out there that talks about it as well. And so if you just have just one culture that's focused on just one race or one gender, ultimately you're going to fail. Yeah. You're going to fail. Yeah. Like I said, you know, it really is trying to see and track where these companies are going to be in 4 or 5 years from now. Is Jack Daniel's still going to be? I would say this. I love me some Jack Daniel's, but I'm also going to Uncle Nearest.
Uncle Nearest. Uncle Nearest. And we talked about them and how, you know, they're $1 billion company now. And let's be real. That's the other piece that we didn't talk about. Jack Daniel's only exists because of Uncle Nearest. Yes. Right? So it was a Black man who taught them how to distill, and they took that and made multi-billion-dollar company,
valued at $1 billion.
You know what I mean?
Probably more now.
And now here we are saying, oh, they're cowering to this anti-woke campaign, and now, so I don't know, y'all. It's a lot, of course. I think we talk about our own personal experiences, and so even on the a couple podcasts ago when the CGG team was on, we talked about this glass cliff and what that looks like. And so generally we're only going to get promoted when ish hits the fan, right? When there's a lot of stuff that's happening within organizations that are going awry. And now that's when we get the opportunity to lead in the mess. Right. And so at this point, this article is talking about the lack of promotion when there's more white folks and there's not as much diversity in an organization. And so, you know, I think the other thing that we have to consider is that people talk about this DEI as didn't earn it, and they have this whole notion of who is considered, you know, a leader. Even we've talked about that, the bias in what a leader looks like when you think about it. So I just think that there's a lot that we have to consider as Black people in going into organizations that provide inclusive working environments for us. Right.
The article also talks about these other effects, right, of intersectionality and what that looks like. And it says the impact we identify on Black women is distinct from the effect of being a numerical minority. Hispanic men, Hispanic women, and Black men are numerically similar demographic groups to Black women employees, yet we do not observe an effect of whiter teams on their turnover and promotion. To further probe the intersectionality of our results, we investigate whether the effect of white coworkers on Black women is differentially driven by either white men or white women coworkers. We find that while both the initial shares of white men and women coworkers influence turnover for Black women, the point estimate for the effect of white men coworkers is almost twice as large as that of white women coworkers, and only the share of white male coworkers influences Black women's promotions. So that, and so again, you know, they have, have their evidence here. They have, the intersectionality piece as well. But ultimately what it's really coming down to is that we really need to diversify teams, whether it's Black women, Black men, white women, Hispanic women. And this needs to be a complete diversified team. But again, right, like you said, getting people in the door is just not good enough. Yeah. Right. So yeah, this is really an interesting article to explore.
Yeah. So I think, the outcomes being affected by majority white colleagues just means, to your point, that we need to consider all layers within organizations too, right? We think about the lack of leadership being diverse, which happens all the time. And we go into these other organizations and have conversations and find that they don't really, some people see it as an issue. I think what you see most often in terms of the undertaking for DEI initiatives for organizations is the gender piece. Yes. So there's a lot of focus on, gender inclusivity, especially at a leadership level, but not as much racial. You don't see that as much within organizations, probably because it's tougher. It's tougher to do.
Right. Yeah. And the last thing they talk about is that their study, which it'll be interesting to dive into a little bit more, but their study traces how the impacts of initial interactions are enacted across routine practices, so including performance evaluations and work assignments to produce disparities in turnover and promotion that limit firm diversity and heightened costs associated with developing and managing human capital.
Because there's a cost to retention, and lack of retention. So you can think about turnover, the cost of turnover, essentially. So somebody's in an organization, they're there for 2 years, you give them a lot of work, right? And so they're doing their work, but then when they leave, there's an automatic gap there. And so I think there's a cost of turnover. The other point that I wanted to mention, because this talks about performance evaluations and disparities. Yep. I've seen that as a practitioner. Yes. In former organizations. I've seen it as a consultant in other organizations. When you look at the data, it talks about how, say there's two people, and I've seen this happen before. There's two people. There's a white employee. There's a, let's just say, Black employee. You would see that manager that's managing both the white and Black employee write down very similar things for their performance evaluation. So let's say, the white employee, they are great with data. They do this, but they could, use a little help here. The Black employee, they're great with data. They do this, but they could use a little help here. And then the scoring would be different. The white employee would be scored a little bit higher than the Black employee. And so we would challenge and push back and say, wait, why are these scores different when you said the almost exact same thing for these employees? And then you would see them, oh my gosh, I didn't even recognize that I did that. And so when you talk about bias and that coming into play for things like performance evaluations, opportunities for promotions and advancement, there is a bias from a racial standpoint.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean? Yeah. And I've seen, things very similar as well. And which makes me nervous again is rolling back all these DEI policies and really a lack of education of what this actually does for organizations. Right. But again, I link this all back to profitability of the organization. So if you have high turnover rates, you're going to ultimately see like, man, what am I doing wrong? Like you're going to see some data in that, right? Yeah. And so it's just almost like a waiting game. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's what I look at it as just a waiting game. It's just, unfortunately, it sucks.
I don't know if we could just wait, though. I don't know if we can.
I'm not saying us wait. I'm saying that wait to play out to see what's going to happen with these companies.
I guess that's my point, though, is like, okay, we're going to wait, and then we're going to wait and see that it's messed up. Oh, yeah. And more jacked up. Oh, yeah. And then what? Oh, yeah. Then we're starting at ground zero all over again?
We are starting at ground zero. We are starting at ground zero.
I think that's what I'm scared about and nervous about, because I think what DEI does, whether it has a great outcome and impact, is it at least brings you that level of awareness of what's happening in an organization. If you don't have that department, because I used to do it, to look at that data and disaggregate and say, oh, we do have a problem with women leaving the organization, or this department, there's more women leaving than any other department. What's going on here? And actually have us go and look. Oh, yeah. Then what's going to happen? No one's going to take notice until it's too late. And now you've lost all the diversity in your organization.
Oh, yeah. And but it's happening. You see, it's happening. I mean,
it's always happening.
It's happening. But I do think that, I keep circling back to this whole, and I know it's more of a political thing that has implications, but I look at it as like Project, 2025, for example, and how I keep saying that's truly a playbook of all things that are happening. Yeah. We need to come together in a concerted effort to say, this is our playbook.
Right. Right.
This is our playbook. That's not just DEI, but it's our playbook of what needs to happen for the future of our country, for the next generation. Yeah. You know, but also too, really including everybody, not excluding a group that Project 2025 does, but including how does everyone win? You know? And
I think that's a great point, is that we have to collectively have the action on the other side. You got the Robby Starbuck over here galvanizing an entire group to be anti, and it doesn't even seem like it's that much effort that they're really putting in it. They're just highlighting, hey, they got DEI programs, y'all. You don't agree with this, right? Harley Davidson riders, so make some noise. They make noise. In less than a week, they rolled back the entire program, and people, their jobs are now being reoriented into another role.
And I think part of it is sometimes when it comes to, like, for an example, the right wing and all these folks, a lot of times it's like, we don't care who carries the message, as long as the message is being carried. Whereas sometimes on the other side, it's like people are fighting on who's carrying the message
for the side that's trying to make it more inclusive. And
I mean, let's just face it, right? There's multiple organizations that are doing great work, but a lot of times it's this argument, this push and pull of who's going to carry the message. It doesn't matter who carries it.
We need everybody carrying the message.
We need everybody to carry it. We need everybody. We need mom, dad, NCAA or NAACP, NCAA too, NAACP, urban. We need everybody carrying the message, right? It doesn't matter who is carrying it, and I think that's what sometimes it comes down to.
And I think, you know, there are some things that are happening, and I feel like I've seen, and I don't remember who it was. Was it Policy Link? I know that they're having a conference right now in Atlanta, but there was an organization that came out with like a counter reaction, not just reaction, but a counter program and explanation of what to do in spite of Project 2025. So it's out there. We just got to find it and highlight it.
We should definitely do an episode dissecting.
Oh, for sure.
All of it. It's going to take some time, y'all.
For sure. I mean, there's specific DEI measures in there, but the Department of Education, we can go on and on about what they're trying to roll back. Yeah. But child, we gonna see. Yeah. But not just see. We have to come up with a collective plan. And plan. Yeah. So when we gonna do it?
The time is now.
The time is now.
The time is now. Like I said, it doesn't matter who carries the plan. Right. The plan needs to be carried.
And supported.
And supported. That's the key.
So yeah. More to come on that. Yes. We'll continue to highlight what that looks like. You know what I mean? But yeah, we got work to do, y'all. Yeah. Like always.
Always. Like doesn't stop.
Right.
So it's time for our gem of the day.
Gem of the day. And
I actually have a quote, y'all. I actually came prepared today. Okay. I mean, I'm always prepared, wink, wink. But so again, as we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, I've been putting together this curriculum for Out of Bounds. And a lot of things that I'm talking about is, what does it mean to be resilient? And what pivotal points do you face in life where you can either go down track A or track B? And as I am starting to develop this curriculum, there is a quote that keeps coming back to me. And it was, I believe in 2017, and Denzel Washington said this quote. And I don't know if he actually coined it or he just said it, but I'm using this from now on. But it says, ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. I'm going to say that one more time.
Say it again, yeah.
Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. And so I think about, even in this work of DEI and this work of just really seeing a shift in our country and what's happening, and knowing that it's not easy, and it never has been easy. And so with this quote, it just reminds me that, you know, if it was easy, that's a threat. It's a threat. What have you faced in life where a door has just been wide open for you, been sent wide open for you, or you just walked through the room and like, I'm here, I showed up? I mean, yeah, but like really, when you look at your life from A to almost Z, like things aren't easy, right? And so this quote just really speaks to me. And I'm going to say it one more time. Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. So I'd rather take the hardship any day than ease. Okay. Because in life, that's just how you succeed.
Nothing comes
right?
easy. You got to put the work in.
Fall down 7 times, stand up 8.
Period.
You know?
Okay.
So that's my thing.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. That's great. And I'm on the same, we usually in the same vein of some sort, but I also have a quote, and it's just been an interesting time, right? Like, I think about the transition. We're leaving summer. We're about to, enter into the fall season, and transitions are always a good time to kind of like reevaluate and think about what has happened the past season, what you might want to change moving forward. And so I also have a quote, and this is from Jeff Moore Official on Instagram, but it says, observe, but don't internalize, love, but don't become dependent, give, but don't expect the same, think, but don't dwell, encourage, but don't force, speak, but don't be reckless, and ultimately just keep going. And this speaks to me because I think I'm having a transition period in terms of how I respond and react sometimes, right? And so it's funny because Kim and I, Kim, business partner at Clementine, we were just talking this morning about how, in moments of peril or distress, or in moments of people who might not think of you in the same way that you think of them, it's not on you to own those feelings on somebody else's side, right? And it's on you to own what you can change and what you can direct. And there's some cases where you see people, you've helped them, you've been friendly. I mean, this could be a client, this could be a personal relationship, and they don't show up in the same way that you show up. And they spend a lot of time, probably not thinking about what you've done for them in the past or how you've positioned them in the past. But I always think about keeping composure. I always think about, if you want to respond like that and act like that, I'll let you, but I also just have to own what I can own in that moment. And so I'm in a period of some transitions on that side. And sometimes it could be hard because, I have a tendency to not want to let go of, man, we had such a great relationship before. I might have helped you before as a client. I might have been a great friend to you, but if you're not showing up in that same vein, it's not on me because I know I didn't change up. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so, I'm going to keep my composure, keep it cute. But ultimately, you could go.
Adjust accordingly.
Period.
That's how I always say, adjust accordingly.
So that's my gem of the day, right? Okay. Like, I think transitions happen, and not everybody's going to be in the same position as they were before, but it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. Because there are other people who are and who will always, support you and lift you up in a great way, too. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. Okay. All right, friend.
Adjust accordingly. I'm keep saying that. So, well, we are at the end of our podcast, and we have some exciting stuff happening in the next couple of weeks. Right. It's like,
what's happening? Because I'm like, what's happening?
Friend.
Oh, that's right.
So
we do have. Okay.
Yes, Black Gems is going on the road again, y'all.
We're going on the road, y'all. We're going live.
We're going live at the Congressional Black Caucus. Yes, I'm really excited for this.
I'm excited about that too. Right. So I don't know who we're gonna interview yet or talk to when we get down there, but we were chosen to represent, and so we're gonna represent the podcast and talk with some folks at Congressional Black Caucus down in DC this year. But I'm really excited because this is a pivotal year for so many reasons. Yes. We've already highlighted a lot of the work right actually before DNC happened with just how people are trying to position. There's a lot of policy conversations happening. So let's get into the meat of it. Yes. Right? What's going on? Where are people trying to champion? Yep. What should we be tuned into?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really excited. Maybe we should go live one of these days.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. So look out for that. But I'm really excited for this.
Me too. Yeah. All right. So we'll see y'all on the next podcast.
All right.
Another episode of the Black Gems Dive In Podcast.
All right. Bye, y'all.